All right, welcome back to our Ready Player Me VR IK tutorial. What we did in the last episode is we basically just started setting up our player. All we did is we added the player input. We put the default RPM avatar in there, which is going to act as our host. And then we have the XR interaction manager with the input action manager. Eventually we're gonna add a player controller, but let's not do that just yet, because that'll make it just, we don't have an environment, so I'll add that later. But let's go ahead and start doing our IK rigging. I've done this in a previous tutorial, but it was utilizing OVR instead of XR. But the process is still the same for setting everything up. So we're gonna go into Package Manager, and we're gonna go to Unity Registry. We're gonna search Animation. And we have animation rigging. We want to install that. All right, that took a weirdly long time. I don't know why it took so long. I'm glad I paused the video. There's samples. I've never taken a look at the samples before, but maybe check them out. Maybe it'll take stuff. But yeah, I've never used the samples. I should check them out at some point, but I'm not going to do that now. Okay, so now we have this animation rigging menu up at the top. And so we're just going to click on our game object that has our animator on it. We're not actually going to put this on the armature. We're just going to pick the game object that has our animator. I don't know if that's what's important, but that's just what I've always done. I learned how to do this like a year ago, and I can't remember why that was important. But we're just going to go to animation rigging, and I'm going to go to rig setup. Now, something that I should note real quick, once you start adding pieces to your rig setup, you can't change it that much. So what we have now is on our RPM avatar here, I have this rig builder component and I have one rig. I mean, you can have multiple rigs, but you can't have them all active at the same time, I don't think. I was just experimenting with it the other day, and when I had a second rig, it just broke everything. But this here is where you're going to create all your IK type constraints. And when you do it, you got to keep the hierarchy going down. If you try to grab one of the children or one of the siblings and move it up in the hierarchy, it just breaks stuff. I don't know why. It's just something to keep that in mind. All right, that was a long pause. I forget what I was saying, but I think we're just jumping in now and building this rig, right? So, the thing that we want to do now is, let's start with the head transform. Yeah, let's do the head transform first. We'll start at the top of the body, and we will work our way down. So what are we doing with this rig anyway? So, basically, we're going to tell this rig what is going to control the armature, right? The armature of the game. So we're going to create an empty, and let's just call this head constraint. And so we're going to come over here and add component. There we go. And we're going to do, I think we're on the head. I like to do a multi-parent constraint. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? I don't think so. I think here I do a multi-aim. Yes. So on my head constraint, it's a multi-aim. So, Brackeys did a great video, and that's how I learned most of my animation rigging knowledge was from Brackeys animation rigging videos. So check that out. It's really good. The documentation is really well done, but super confusing. There's a lot of the constraints that I don't get how they work. But the ones that we use for this, it's all very straightforward, and you should understand how they work once I. All right, so we have a multi-aim constraint. And so what are we constraining? So we're actually going to constrain the, now in some armatures I've constrained the neck bone. Sometimes it's the head bone. It just kind of depends on how it's set up. But with this guy, it is the head bone. So I really don't need to dig in there. I can just click over here and my transform list and just search head. And there's only one head. So boom, there's our head transform. I can click here if I want to see it in the armature to make sure I've selected the right guy. And just another quick reminder, I don't know if I said this in the last video, But not only do you need to have a host avatar that's got face mask and a helmet and all that, but you also need to have a masculine and a feminine, because the scales of the bones, I guess, are different. And so you need to have a host avatar for both of those. And so when the player chooses if they're going to have a masculine or feminine avatar, you probably want to have a button in your UI asking the player, masculine or feminine. That way you know which rig to. I mean, you could technically separate it into two different prefabs if you want. Have the player decide ahead of time, long before you instantiate player object, if they want to be masculine or feminine. Just keep in mind, if you're using this male host and you try to load in a feminine avatar, the face is jacked. So you don't want that. Like the eyes just like bug out of the head and stuff. So we have our multi-aim constraint. So what we're constraining is that head bone. So we want to control this head bone through the animation rigging process. And so the way it does it is there's a source object that constrains the head. And we actually need to create an object for this. A lot of times with the animation rigging, you can't just constrain something that you want constrained and then pick the thing that you want to constrain. A lot of the times, not a lot, but some of the times you'll have a separate object that's, let's just show you how we do the head. So with the head, we're going to create another empty, and this is going to be our head target. So a lot of the IK stuff, a lot of the animation rigging, there's targets and hints. And so we're going to have a target now. You know what, while we're here, let's take this head constraint and it doesn't really need to, I'm not going to mess with the constraints. I want to look at my target. All right, so I'm going to take my target and I'm going to control click my head. And this is a great tool. You don't even have to, you can use this part of the animation rigging menu to line up any object. It doesn't even have to be part of the rig or armature, at least not that I've seen. I've used this for several different. So if I go to animation rigging, I'm going to align position. And what that does is this head target, look, now it's right where the head is. All right, so this is what I'm going to have the head constraint. It's multi-aim. So what it does, it's going to take the forward direction and it's going to look at wherever this head target is. So I want my head target to be kind of in front. Also, let's note the eyes. It's kind of hard to see my eyes here. So let's take off, hide the headwear. Also hide the swear. And okay, I can see through those glasses. This work. So I'm gonna take my head target and let's just go dead on here. Hit F. I'm just gonna move my head target right there in between the eyes. All right. And then, I mean, it doesn't really matter how far forward I go, but I definitely want it to be forward a good bit. Just for fun, let's do it a whole meter. Boom. We're a whole meter ahead now. That's where the head is going. And based on your rig, you might find it's better to be higher and lower, so you'll just take a look and see if you like it. All right, so now if I go back to my head constraint, my source objects, I can now drag my head target and I can go boom like that. So let's see if this works. Let's just hit play and let's see what happens. Because I think this will work. If it doesn't, that'll be a bummer. And another thing you can do is if you notice this little animation rigging panel, my player's animated. But let's look at this head target. And I forgot that the rigs come with their thing. And let's just, boom, look at that. There's an animation running, but I'm also controlling where the head bone is looking. Pretty sweet, right? All right, and another thing you can do is, of course, with all Unity game objects, you can always put these guys on there so you know where it is. I'm not sure why, but it's got its own little, I forget what these are called. But it's got its own little dealies you can add to see them in the scene. So I can do these little effectors, or I'm gonna do like a ball effector. So now you can see it in the scene, even without the game object highlighted. But the tags, these little thingies do that too. I don't know. Maybe it's just to separate it to give some transparency, so you know that's related to the rig. All right, so that's my head target right there. So it makes it really easy for me to click on it in the scene and start acting it. Yeah, so there's our head is constrained. All right, so let's do the spine next. Let's just go top to bottom. So if we look, we have 2 spines, 3 spines. You don't have to adjust these, but I'm just going to show you what it would look like if you did. Oh, I'm just going to glance at my other project. Did I end up sticking with mine? So I ended up just doing spine 2 and spine 1. I didn't bother with the spine, maybe just because it's so close to the hips. But you can do all of them, and so that just makes the looking a lot smoother rather than just the head looking back. So I'm going to come here to the rig. I'm going to create another empty, and let's call this spine 2 constraint. And I'm just going to go boink, boink. And we're going to go, that was control D. Okay. Spine, spine 1 constraint. And then down F2, spine 3 constraint. And what we can do now is do an aim, right? Yeah, so multi-aim constraint. And the object we're going to constrain is spine 2. And we can just look, we can use the head target for all of these. All right, so if I go to spine 1, shoot. I'm just going to copy this component. And oh no, it might break everything because I told you, don't reorganize this hierarchy in the rig, it gets mad. Oh no, it should have been in between 2. Why did I call this spine 3? This should just be spine. That's why. All right, so let's go ahead and paste this component. Control or right click, paste. New. All right, and now on spine 1, I just draw up spine 1 here. And spine, we're gonna drop this. All right, so let's take a look at what this looks like if we just hit play the way it's set up now. All right, so you can see that this is a bit wonky. And probably multi-aim is not what we want on these spines, but we also are we definitely don't want that. We want to do we're probably going to want to do rotation, and that's probably what I did. Yeah, I did multi-rotation, so we're not going to use the head target. But while we're doing this, I just want to show you because it'll be really obvious. Here I'm looking at spine 2, and you can adjust the weight of how much the source object is impacting the constraint. So I can take this weight, I can move it down, and you can see it straightens. All right, but we don't want the spine pointing to this guy. So we're going to remove all those. And we are going to add a multi-rotation constraint. And our source object is going to be our main camera, which is in our XR rig's gone. My goodness, this project is possessed. So I was looking at this the other day, just to see how far we got, and everything I did in that last video, like everything was missing, and it's missing even more now. The XR rig is gone. How did that even happen? I'm gonna pause and add it back. Also, I was watching my video the other day, and I set my tracking origin mode to floor, and I think I want it for device. Otherwise, the offset's really gonna jack everything up if you have someone. I can go look at my other project. What did I do in my? Yeah, set for. So it should be set for device. All right. Okay, so now we have our origin back. Let me go back to my spine 2 constraint. And really all of these, I'm going to have the source object that's constraining its rotation is going to be the main key. Drop that in, and let's just see if that worked for them. To spine 1 and spine, but I still need constrained objects. Drop them in here. And now if we hit play, notice if I turn off gizmos, the little rig effector is still there. All right, so now if we hit play, we should see if I rotate the main camera, which is gonna be, well, maybe not, since I have it set. I don't have my XR device, I don't have my Quest hooked up. All right, where is our camera? All right, so our camera is kind of up here. It's for players and but if I now rotate this camera, it won't let me because I might not be able to have the ability. I probably have to have my HM simulator turned on to actually show that. Yeah, so here in my XR plugin management, I haven't even set it up all the way yet. But let's just do the Unity mock HMD, and it's going to install those packages, and then I'll have to check the documentation if I can remember what the short. All right, so of course, clicking right here on view documentation didn't take me to mock HMD loader information, so I had to go Google it, and then I found where in the Unity documentation. But input is not supported. It's up to your application to mock input by moving the camera's parent, providing its own tracked pose, provided blah, blah, blah. So I might not be able to rotate the camera. Let's see. Since I have it on mock, it might let me be able to rotate it now. But I don't know. I've only done like with the OVR platform, it kind of gives you that option. All right, so here it's mocking it. Not letting me here. So can I now rotate the camera since I'm using the mock one? Oh, no, tracked pose driver. Not. I'm just gonna have to plug in my head. That's what it's gonna be. All right, so before I plug in my headset, I'm gonna go ahead and check the Oculus plugin provider on here. Slice XR startup is there. Now, while that's going, I'm gonna plug in my headset. All right, so now you can see I'm wearing my headset, and it is now rotating all these spine pieces based on the rotation of my camera, but it's doing a bit too much. Because we really only want it to rotate on the y-axis. So we really want to uncheck everything but y. But unfortunately, can't really change this stuff on the fly. And my headset's cable is right now. I'm going to try to switch to AirLink. I don't know what happened to my cable, but it's... All right, so we're going to come to all three of these. And we're going to uncheck X and Z, and we only want the spines to rotate on the Y. And I'm connected now via AirLink. Let's try hit and play again. This makes me really sad that my cable seems like it's got a short. All right, so now it's only rotating my spine, not when I go up and down, but only left to right. All right, but we don't necessarily want to move our spine that drastically. That person's got a lot of energy right there. So we're going to go and let's take our weight. I use my other project just because my brain's not really working right now. If I look at my other project, what did I do for spine 2? I did 0.3, spine 1. I did 0.3 as well. So we can go weight 0.3. The weight we can change at runtime, but like everything else, we can't. So we'll change this to 0.3, and maybe this spine, do it a little bit less, like 0.1. So really what I might want to do is take spine 1, make this 0.2. That way each one is turning just a little bit less. So now you can see head should be turning a lot more. There we go. All right, just because I'm not turning. You can see that's a lot more natural turning. All right, so my head is still turning pretty well, and then my spine is just kind of rotating my shoulders and body just a little bit by just adjusting the weight of those rotation constraints. All right, so I need to go back and change those. So we're gonna do 0.3, and you can do these however you want, right? These numbers don't really, this isn't gospel, all right? You can put whatever numbers look good for you. All right, so now we have our spine done. Do I want to use my hips? Yeah, okay, so we're gonna rotate our hips. And so the reason this is important is it's not really actually that important. We need to go all the way to our toes, but we don't have anything that can actually control our feet rotate. So what some people will do is they will actually have the whole body. Like if we had a half body avatar, it'd be a no-brainer for us to have the XR origin as the parent, and then like the avatar as a child of the main. Then wherever the camera's moving, body's moving, golden. But we don't want our whole player to just be turning and rotating the same way our head is. That's why we're using this hierarchy instead. All right, so let's go ahead and create another empty. And this is going to be our hips constraint. And our hips constraint is just going to be rotation. But we're going to actually, unlike our spines, we're actually going to allow it to be rotated in all axes. And this is really important because if you lock it to Y, it gets really janky. And I don't know why. I don't have an explanation for it. But it'll just randomly your body will just start flip-flopping back and forth. It makes no sense to me. But I never claimed to be the most intelligent person in the world. All right, so here's our hips constraint. We're going to do a multi-rotation constraint. And we're going to constrain the hips. We're going to keep X, Y, and Z. We don't have a source object yet. We're going to create that now. We're going to right-click. We're going to create an empty. And just like our head, we're going to have a hips target. And so our hips target is actually going to base itself off of the head target. All right, so our hips target, we are going to do a multi-aim constraint. And what we are now constraining is our hips target. Our source object is going to be our head target. And our rolled up type, I set this for scene up. I don't know if you really need to. But on the hips target, we do only want to constrain the Y. And you might want to set some limitations here. Maybe you don't want your hips to fully turn 180. I don't know, how far can our hips really go? But just to give it some limitation, maybe we do minus 90 and 90. And so now our hips constrain can do its rotation on the hips target. So even though we're allowing it to use all axes, since it's using the hips target as its source, our hips target is constrained to just Y. So that allows us to fix that crazy flip-flopping I was talking about. All right, so now if we hit play, assuming my air link is still working, it is. So now if we hit play, we should see the hips rotate pretty much at the same rate as the head. So we might need to adjust that. Gotta love the scene played really fast. All right, so I'm taking this and I'm rotating my head and rotating, it's rotating. You can kind of see that the hips are rotating too. I guess I could. But yeah, it's not going to let you go 360. And I think that's because of our hips constraint. I limited it to just, it's like snapping the hips back around the other side. So that's why you're not seeing it around. But you can also do your head constraint, and you can limit your head constraint to something. I can't remember what I've done. You know, I can just look at the project. I sure did not. I have no constraints. Oh, that's not my head. Head constraint. Yeah, I did minus 60. So I'll just put that. But because I put a constraint on my hips, I don't think we'll ever actually get close to these head constraints because the hips kind of control everything. So the hips would really kind of snap all the way around the other side, and so your head should never really spin all the way around. All right, so that's just the upper body. How long is our recording right now? 23 minutes. Okay, so I think we're going to stop here. Do I want to stop here? Let's stop here. Because it's going to be at least another 20 minutes to do the arms, and I don't want this video to be 40 minutes long. But until that video comes out, you can use what I've shown you here. You can go to Brackeys. You can look at Brackeys video and animation rigging. You can check out Unity's documentation, animation rigging, and see if you can figure out what we're going to be doing on the arms is 2-bone IK constraint. All right, so we'll check that out in the next video. So until then, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends, and check out all my other stuff I have in the description. See you next time.